Welcome to RDBA's webcast for today. Well, we started this series on May 5th. We've already, on our first webcast, had 759 views. So thank you, and thank you for joining us today. Today, it's going to be a real interesting webcast and discussion. It's all about vendor promotions, and there's a lot of questions out there about it. So we're going to get started, but first, we've got a very special announcement. Unfortunately, we're not all together. We're not in Chicago at the RD Exchange, so we haven't been able to award, if you would, the RDBA RD of the Year award in person. So we're doing it remotely. And I'm very pleased to announce that this year's RD of the Year goes to Raley Rosado Martinez. And she contributes to the transformation of their stores in an ecosystem that's filled with resources through 5 key services and programs: the oversight of a nutrition clinic with goals to move consumers from treatment to prevention, in-store, community and employee events and programs, social media influencer, mentorship to nutrition students through the demonstration of consumer behavior changes in the store setting, and the management of the Healthy Path product category. So let's hear from Raley.
Greetings to you all. My name is Raley Rosado Martinez, retail dietitian from the Healthy Path Markets in Aguadilla, Isabela, and San Sebastián, Puerto Rico. It is with great honor that today I received the 2020 RD of the Year award. For the past 2 years, I have been working in a company of innovation and with a passionate team working towards our goal of becoming more than just a grocery store, but rather be a nutrition resource for all our community. This award represents an accomplished mission. The RD role at the Healthy Path Markets is one of strategic vision, mentoring and leadership grounded on the principles and mission of the professional license. Together, we contributed to the transformation of our stores into an ecosystem filled with dietary resources. I would like to thank our President and CEO, Annette, and everyone in the Healthy Path Markets family who have been part of this great success. Thank you for allowing me to become part of a positive health outcome in our community. My mission is still very clear: to guide and instruct the customer on the right purchasing choices for their dietetic needs and goals. My business challenge also remains clear: to deliver this service while delivering value to the corporation. Thank you, RDBA, for gathering all dietitians in the field and provide the needed tools to continue their impactful missions. Thanks to God, who is always by my side, and thanks to my family who have been part of this journey, participated in all my occurrences, and always believing in my capabilities. I would like to leave you with a saying of my own. The most beautiful thing about nutrition is that it recognizes that we are all unique and different. This versatility enables us to work together to reach everyone's goal. Thank you and have a great day, you awesome dietitian.
Us at RDBA. Congratulations! And Annette, I went out of order. I apologize. Could you introduce our panel today?
Yeah, Phil, before I introduce the panel, just one quick mention. You know, we always have a great team of pool of dietitians to choose from for the RD of the Year award. We actually acknowledge as well as Raley as the winner, 4 runner-ups for this award. So congratulations also this year go to Danielle Beneforte and Jamie Pepper from ShopRite, Amy Peterson from Coburn's, and Ellie Wilson from Price Chopper. So thanks all of you for the amazing work you're doing to advance the career of, well, just the profession of retail dietetics. So Phil, yes, absolutely. Let's introduce our panelists today. So we're thrilled in this discussion about, vendor funding and how retail dietitians can impact vendor funding in the pandemic era. We're great privileged to have 2 great speakers with us today. So Stephanie Schultz is the Senior Director of Marketing Communications at Skogen Festival Foods in Wisconsin. And Yvette Waters.
Wait, before we get to Yvette. And also it's important to note that Stephanie was the first ever in 2014 RDBA RD of the Year. And as soon as she found out and we gave it to her at the FMI, if I recall correctly. As soon as she found out that she won this, she also got a call from her boss and got a promotion
Yes.
or a raise,
Yes.
something, right?
Yes. And actually, I think, Stephanie, that Sherry Steinbaugh and I were with you in line for coffee when you found out that you had been promoted.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was a good day all the way around.
So sorry to interrupt.
No, that's
Yeah.
okay. All good. Our second panelist today is Yvette Waters, who's a nutrition strategist and brand influencer at Raley's in California. So welcome, Yvette.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, no, it's really great to have both of you. So Stephanie, we're going to throw our first kind of discussion question to you because you actually suggested this topic for a webcast as a member of the RDBA advisory board. So tell us about why, Steph, you thought that this was a great topic to cover in a webcast and why our members needed to hear more about this topic.
Yes, and I'm thankful that you bit on the idea because it is a topic that really needs to be discussed. So I lead the marketing and communications for Festival Foods in Wisconsin, and I'm really fortunate to be surrounded by a lot of people who have been in this industry, buying, procuring, doing this stuff for their entire career. And what they've all told me is they've never experienced anything like this. So obviously, those of us going through it for the first time, this is their first time too, whether they have 2 or 3 decades of this under their belt. But the thing that I think was most intriguing to me is how rapidly and how drastically everything was changing. So from day one of understanding what this pandemic was going to mean to us, we're talking, do we pull ads to limit hoarding and try to get the guest traffic under control because stores everywhere were just chaotic, to within 2 weeks wondering, okay, we're going to put an ad together, but are there any ad items any deals to get items into the ad? So the spectrum there was one thing. And while our business was doing, grocery was one of the very fortunate throughout this pandemic to have good sales and be considered in that essential category and take care of our communities. But while those sales were good, one very important revenue stream for our businesses was hit pretty hard, and that was ad fees. So understanding the balance sheet and the P&L and knowing that $1 in ad fees is not equivalent to $1 in store sales, you really have to understand how that all works together. And it's one of those pieces, especially for dietitians in retail working in this space, where they're required to bring in ad fees or work with vendors. It's just really important to know about. So then I brought it up and voila, here we are.
We do listen, right?
You do.
Also, one of the things that I think that's so important about this discussion is that things are changing dramatically. And one of the questions that we keep on getting from retailers at all levels is what happens post COVID-19? A lot of retailers are very concerned that promotions might go away. Another concern, as Stephanie pointed out, is you don't know what's going to be on the shelves. So how can you write an ad 6 weeks out? And to the point of what Stephanie said about the speed of which everything happened, keep in mind that normally, whether it be a dietitian or a buyer or a merchandiser, you're planning for Thanksgiving 4 months ahead. 5 months ahead, Super Bowl, 4 or 5 months ahead. This, you had 4 or 5 hours to try to figure out what to do. And I guess the big challenge that we've got, and hopefully we'll address a little bit today too, is what happens post COVID-19. Will we then be able to get back some of the vendor participation in the RD programs? And I'd like, Yvette, for you to comment, and then for you, Stephanie, to comment on that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, I really wish I had my crystal ball at this moment because really not sure. The COVID-19 pandemic has absolutely affected customers' mindsets, and especially when it comes to food and beverage, and it appears to be a long-lasting impact on them. So for short term, we had to definitely pull our ads and couldn't offer all the services that we used to be able to offer for vendors, but we still we want to continue that relationship because our vendor partners are so important to us along with our customer base. And it is definitely a relationship. But I think there's the traditional style that's going to still be there, but there's definitely a lot of learnings that we had from this. So the vendor partners and the promotional opportunities that they provide us are probably going to transition to more digital focused, online e-commerce type of focus, really not just always in-store handout kind of things. I think there's going to be a lot of the traditional realms of things, but from the learnings, a lot of things that are going to we're going to have to think out of the box on other ways to provide those opportunities for consumers.
But Yvette, during COVID-19, Raley's actually opened up 3 new stores. Now, everything that I know about store openings is very, very vendor focused and funded. What was your experience in opening up those stores with those vendors?
That's a great question. So we opened up 2, and we have one slated to open on July 1st. And like you said, we're planning these months in advance. So these stores were being planned very much so before pre-COVID, and a lot of those, a lot of the vendor supports were already there. But we had to face something as, such as not having toilet paper and paper towel on the shelves of many of our stores. These stores were already being stocked with these because they had been stocked previous. So we had the challenge of how do we explain this to our customers, and along with aligning with all of the safety measures and opening these stores, we definitely didn't put any form of grand openings. We offered this is now open and provided all the safety measures there and wanted to allow for our customers to have a full shop. Our vendor partners were fantastic in it. It was more our team having to explain to the consumers why products weren't in some stores and were in this store. So very interesting time to open stores.
Yeah, for sure.
Stephanie, before I let you do your crystal ball, Stephanie, I just want to remind our audience, please add to our Facebook page, RDBA's Facebook page, any comments that you've got, any questions that you've got for either Yvette, or Stephanie, or Annette, or me. And as we go through this, we'll take your questions as well. Sorry, Stephanie, what's your crystal ball say?
I wish I had one, because that would be a really fun tool in this business. But I think we're going to see effects depending on which spectrum you're really looking at for the foreseeable future. I mean, obviously those in-store things that changed from plexiglass in the check lanes to aisle markers showing you which way to go, wearing masks, that all really depends on the CDC. Nobody knows what we'll call it, the 2.0 of this in the fall that they're talking about could look like. I think we'll be much better prepared to react quickly as far as what social distancing means and all of that. But as far as the vendor type things, I just chatted with our senior director of marketing and merchandising merchandising this morning, and he was telling me that our fill rates are still very low from some different vendors. And really, he's talking about, while it feels like we're moving past it, the things have leveled off. We've gotten used to the double-digit increases in store traffic daily. And, we're into summer now in the Midwest. That's a big deal. But one of the things that hasn't changed is the conversation happening on the back end. So absentee rates at a lot of different production facilities might be still impacting how much they can put out. So one of the examples he gave to me this morning was that a particular line of peanut butter actually pulled all ad fees through the remainder of this year. So some we're seeing come back already. We're seeing others that might be August, September timeframe, and still others who it might be next year before you see some promotions from those particular brands.
So Stephanie, one interesting question, and Phil talked a little bit about, that most retailers are planning months in advance, right? So you have stores extremely close to Lambeau Field, and as a Minnesota Viking fan how hard that is for me to even say the words Lambeau Field. But, you guys have a lot of work you do just given that particular team in your area. But, tailgating season and football season is a huge promotion. So as a company, are you shifting the promotions you're doing? Are you pulling back on those existing ones? How are you kind of navigating that? Because we don't even know if we're going to have a professional football season for spectators, right?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And it's one that I've been asking a lot of our community involvement director who handles that relationship with the the team you mentioned. And obviously, I'll respect you enough to not say it out loud. But we do pride ourselves on our relationship with the Green Bay Packers. And one of those things with that, you don't want to lose it, because everybody's looking for that fun thing. Like, the quarantine lifestyle impacts people in different ways, and everybody's just kind of looking for that thing to get back to that sense of normalcy and that sense of fun. So we will definitely continue doing some of our marketing and the work, especially that our dietitian team is doing, to have fun tailgate recipes, because regardless of whether or not fans are allowed in stadiums, I hope that the season goes on, because everybody loves watching football. I shouldn't say everybody, that's a generalization, but many of us, especially if you live in a small football city, you love watching football.
So let's focus for a moment on the more, I hesitate to use the word, but healthy products, and those vendor programs. When I go up and down the aisles of a store, what I notice is a lot more promotion on some of the emerging brands that are healthy. This is their chance to get your attention, for your team to go out there and talk about the health aspects of it. But I'm also not seeing a lot of those products on the shelf. What impact, to your point, Stephanie, as you're trying to fill those shelves, a lot of these small companies are actually co-packed. They don't have their own processing facility, so they're having even more trouble. How is that affecting your vendor-funded programs, or is most of your vendor-funded programs coming from large companies? Yvette, why don't you take the first shot at that?
I was like, me, Stephanie, who? No, I think it's hard for especially like the newer ones that are coming into realm, because a big thing would be product demonstrations and product samplings, and obviously not being able to provide those right now. So that's where it's so important to try and work through the educational standpoint of it, of talking about these type of products, the nutritional benefits, but in a fun way, and also relating to our customers that are at home still. So utilizing those into quick recipe styles, fun ways to involve the children in cooking demonstrations virtually, and enticing them ways that when they see the product and see how it's utilized maybe on a social media aspect of things, then they might entice them to buy when they're not able to actually taste this type of product.
So from a funding standpoint, and you don't have to give me actual numbers because I know you won't.
Right.
But from a funding standpoint, when you switch from an in-store demo or an in-store cooking demo to doing it online, what percentage of revenue have you lost?
That's a good question.
And you might not have even been able to calculate it yet, because
Yeah,
we're in
Right.
the middle of this.
exactly.
But do you, think that you're losing money on this?
I think it's going, because the numbers are not the numbers that we're used to seeing in the standard P&Ls, that I probably couldn't answer that question for months to come, because it's going to take a while to analyze them. To truly see what the funding, along with, because the behavior changes have been modified so drastically, it's going to take some time to really analyze those behaviors, and along with the funding and where the revenue was lost. But I think it's going to also provide us in the next coming months some fantastic opportunities and insights of of learnings on our end, but also requests that we can ask for our vendors, and knowing the ones that we want to support, the ones that necessarily don't have those or are in the co-packing plants, offer them, hey, we have this idea, looking for the out of the box opportunity. So it allows for more conversation, I think, in that realm of things versus the traditional ways.
So I guess my question to you and to Stephanie is, you had a vendor program set up, COVID-19 hits. You've now gone back to that vendor and you've said, okay, I'm going to do it online. I'm going to do it virtually, the same way we're doing this. What has been the reactions that you've gotten? Has it been great? Has it been okay, but I'm going to cut the budget at the same time? Or has it been like, I'm out?
I can always, for myself, it's been overwhelmingly positive because I think that there's an understanding of the transitions that have occurred. So for my conversations with my vendors, they're just really wanting to support us in any way possible. And
Right.
they've been understanding it's like, this is the reality that we live in right now. Is the way to, or the digital platform is the way to go. So I haven't actually had any vendors in my realm of things say no, which has been a really wonderful experience.
Stephanie?
So most of what we do is built into our overall buying and procurement planning. So we've seen a significant reduction because you're talking the whole gamut, not just the better for you type items. I would say the percentage that we're down varies by department. And obviously, I think that's pretty a generalized statement across most retailers. But I will say there's significant percentages that we're down. So going to the question of, okay, let's do all digital, all online. One of the things to keep in mind is depending on how you're set up, now our structure is to work through our buying team and their lane of people that are doing all of the deals so that we are not stealing or borrowing from their bucket, where our goal is to add those shopper marketing dollars to those buckets, because again, we're all working together for the good of our organization, right? And one of the things that I would say is there's initial angst because again, at the end of the day, our primary business driver, particularly at Festival Foods, is our weekly ad that we put together. That's driving a lot of store traffic, and you have to protect the business. So understanding, if they're struggling to just build what they need to, is adding X, Y, and Z thing helpful? Or is now the time to learn more about their business and understand how you can move into helping them meet the goals that they have? And what I mean by that is, asking them, what do your service level reports look like? Every buyer or procurement person should have something like that, whether it is for, those more niche items like the natural and organic type things that are harder to find on the shelf, or there are service levels that look pretty low for many of your very prominent brands that are out there too. So understanding what has really happened to their supply chain, and where we're seeing some of the gaps and why we're seeing some of the gaps, and what can you do to, one, learn, and number two, be the team player during this time, because ultimately what you're doing is teaching them about what you can offer. And I have lots of ideas that I can go through and share as we keep going, but you said I should talk in short snippets, so I'll stop.
No. Share the ideas. Share the ideas.
Well, Phil, can I ask a question before
course.
she does that?
Yeah,
So Stephanie and Yvette, kind of based on that dialogue, I'm curious, is there something your retailer is doing in response to all of this from a promotional standpoint and shifting promotions that you think has been really innovative? Or is there something you've seen another retailer in the industry do that you think is really innovative and you say, oh, I wish I would have thought of that first,
I'll let Stephanie go first.
Sure. One of the things that I would say that I've noticed is very intriguing. So obviously there's been a lot of conversation around what the meat industry looks like through all of this. So front covers have changed a lot on ads, and typically center of the plate, particularly again in the Midwest, West Coast might be a little bit different, but center of those plate items tend to take those top spots that are what are driving the business for that week, right? So we're seeing front covers switch more to some of those general merchandise type goods, things from center store, things that you have a certain quantity on, and you don't risk the out of stock as much as you might, because you don't know what your fresh supply is going to be on a particular item when you're getting replenished every day, 2 days, whatever it is. The other thing that I will say that we're doing more of and that we're seeing more is offering general dollar off. In some cases, it's taking care of your neighbors and saying, we just want to give you this offer, a $5 off $100 purchase. If just, because it's a general thing, it's, you have to come shopping. We know your orders are bigger because people's shopping patterns have changed. And by the way, it's tough to tell you what we're going to have available if we put this total market coverage piece out there and it doesn't hit for another, 8 weeks essentially. So who knows if that'll be on the shelf. So if we say, you get $1 off X department purchase. So as long as you can set up the deal within your system, it works.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. And we've been doing very similar. And I think that that's been very appreciated because there's a lot of folks have also been affected so strongly on an economic standpoint due to this, due to COVID. And I think I was just reading numbers of number of SNAP participants have increased exponentially. So Raley's isn't doing it, but I know that you guys had just done a podcast recently on the Produce RX programs that some other retailers are doing.
Yeah.
So I think that I wish I had that program. I think that would be very beneficial right now. And I would be curious of their warnings with what Stephanie was saying, produce items maybe not being available, how they've transitioned some of their programs in that to provide those opportunities and those dollars that their participants are needing. And I think that those are great programs that this type of environment they would be very appreciative for. So I think that's one of the ones I was very intrigued by. And I was like, ooh, that's a lot of logistics I got to figure out, because I think it'd be a great offering on our end of things.
Before we get to Stephanie's, ideas, which we definitely want to hear and learn from, have either of you had vendors come to you and been stymied because your folks are not taking any new products on? And you've seen some great products that you want to put on the shelf, that are healthy, that are nutritious, that your customer base would love, but your teams, and I'm presuming this, maybe it's not so, in talking to other retailers, what I've basically been told is the buyers are saying, no new products. I can't deal with the products that I have now, yet alone taking on new products. What has been both of your experiences on that? Stephanie, why don't you start, then Yvette, you go, and then Stephanie, we want to hear those ideas.
Ultimately, I would say I haven't experienced that. Again, how we're built into everything with what we do, it's part of how everybody does business. So yeah, we've not turned anything away. I mean, there are products that perhaps haven't made it to the shelf, but nothing that I've been a part of that has been a no-go for that reason.
That's great. Yvette?
Yeah, actually, it's funny that you asked that, because we have our store that's opening up in July will not be like our standard Raley's portfolio that you see as a conventional market. And it's actually going to be called Raley's One Market. It'll be focused in on a lot more type of natural organic type of realm of things. And because of that, in these recent weeks, actually, our merchants have been working very closely with a lot of vendors pulling in products that aren't hitting our standard portfolios, but doing this initial market. So because of that, we have actually changed. That conversation hasn't been the case for us. We've actually been reaching out to a lot of newer and vendors that aren't hitting most of our portfolios and saying, hey, we actually have this new store opening. We'd like to get your whole line in if you only have a couple SKUs in. So that's been very interesting as well. And we're looking at this will be another form of our strategic concept, and will be continuing to grow for the Raley's end of things. So that's been really interesting as well for two stores. Maybe certain conventional products will not make it into this Raley's market, but it has opened up more conversations to vendors and that haven't had the opportunity in the past. So.
And Stephanie, your ideas?
I'm glad that you haven't forgotten about that.
No, I have not.
No.
Very
I'm taking notes.
Tell us more.
Okay, so I just made a list of some of the things that I've been talking about with our team.
And by the way, while you're doing that, Annette and Yvette and I will give you a thumbs up or a thumbs down on the idea.
Perfect.
As you're doing this, okay?
So if I see any thumbs down, I'm just going to keep talking.
Right.
First of all, e-commerce. I assume at this point, most retailers have gotten into e-commerce if they didn't already have a program set up. So I'm fortunate to oversee that area too. So I have a lot of connectivity between the dietitian team at Festival and what we're doing in that space. But again, while we've seen the sales kind of flatten out, not flatten out, they've come down from the peak time when we were all under quarantine by the government order. But it's still significantly higher than where it was 3 months ago. So keeping that in mind, how can you get into the online space and be a part of your company's e-commerce platform, whether that is, again, digital ads, online only ads, things like that. Thanks, Phil.
I give you a thumbs up on that one too.
Agreed.
One of the things with our dietitians at Festival, they're nutrition communications experts. So as all of you are, who are dietitians on the call, but thinking of yourself more as a content creator. So perhaps you're hitting that brick wall of, okay, I can't take any new ideas to sell. So how do I sit down with a buyer and say, okay, what can I bring that's a value add to solidify a long-term deal or get greater allotments from certain vendor partners that they're trying to lock in? So maybe it is a major national brand, but there might be subsets of that category that they can get a greater allotment of X product that's like a 1 or 2 SKU, and you're interested in a number 10 mover. As long as they're still producing it, you might be able to say, well, I will do some of this in kind on the side if they lock in that deal for you. So it's just trying to find ways to think outside the box and, again, utilize your team of resources internally at your organization and be the team player that they need you to be. And ultimately, you're still educating them on all of the things you're doing in the background. Other things that we're really looking at is, the shopping patterns have changed, and we do not expect to see, while you might see 2 shopping trips a week, we don't believe, at least in the Midwest, most people are not going to be doing the daily shopping trip like some used to. They're really truly planning their meal plan out. I think people are just starting to get comfortable, perhaps going into restaurants here and there, doing a little more pickup, but you have this captive audience and people are starting to get bored with the meal plans that they put together 3 months ago. So how can you liven that up? How can you give them date night ideas when you're thinking, to Phil's point, we're planning for the holidays. And how do you make the grocery store, for those of us who don't have much for general merchandise, you are a true grocery store. How do you make grocery gifts Christmas gifts? There are so many different things that you can do with a little bit of, it's kind of Pinteresty kind of content creation, but you can bring so much to life, and adding that little element of fun in a time where I think people are looking for that little bit of unique anything. So there's that. We've talked about meat.
Wait, before I let you go to the next one, Stephanie.
Yeah.
Before pre-COVID, we went shopping 2.1 times a week on average in the U.S. Now we're seeing that number at 1 time a week. So, and that doesn't include, grocery delivery or anything else, but just going into the store. When you hear those numbers, what does that say to you that, about your RD programs, that perhaps you can use an RD program to get people to come to the store more often, to come back because you're running programs? And again, I'm talking about post-COVID. Do you think that that's an opportunity?
I think there is always an opportunity with that. And ultimately, it's one of the, a KPI for most retailers is measuring how many people are coming in your store and what is their basket size. So during this COVID timeframe, I think the dietitians can really help from the giving the meal ideas, helping people plan for that 1 trip a week. But then as we get into these months, again, speaking from Midwest perspective, where you have more fresh items, particularly as your local produce comes into season, it's a good opportunity to get people back, assuming it's safe to do so, to try and drive some of those trips with some of those items that you maybe don't want to buy 7 to 10 days in advance in the fresh areas.
Okay. And go back to I think your next one was about meat, which is
yes.
a major concern.
And I think this kind of comes back to content creation, where there has been a lot of talk of, should people be going meatless? Should they try plant-based items? And it's not to say that those aren't products that people should be trying and giving a fair shot, but understanding too that there's a lot of education that can be done with how to stretch proteins further, how to take some of those items from that singular shopping trip that you're doing in a week and making multiple different meals with the head of lettuce that you haven't purchased ever because you always bought bagged. So getting used to different things like that.
So to that point, and here's a shameless plug for one of our sponsors, the Mushroom Council, the blend, where people are buying mushrooms and buying ground beef, and a 50-50 blend, which is healthier and cheaper, and you can stretch it out to your point. I'd like to ask all three of you a question. You mentioned produce. One of the things that I'm thinking a lot about is how the produce department is going to change, because I see when people are going into the store and they're picking up an apple, or they're picking up an orange, or they're squeezing a lime, or whatever else, other people looking at them going, whoa, I'm not going to go near that lime. That person just touched it. Do we think we're going to evolve to all produce being prepackaged, whether it's in bags or even the way Fresh and Easy tried it and failed, where every apple was wrapped in plastic? Annette, why don't you start on that?
Yeah, Phil, I think it's an interesting discussion, because I think that food safety is going to continue to be a hot button for consumers for a long time. I mean, I think you and I yesterday were talking about, or I was talking to someone yesterday about, when will the grocery store salad bar come back? And I don't see the grocery store salad bar coming back for a very long time. And so I think you do have this reality of the consumer is going to now want more produce prepackaged, to know that it hasn't been touched by 20 people before they touch it, right? But it's interesting to me because it flies in the face of sustainability and minimizing packaging and single-use packaging and those kinds of things. So we're kind of at this interesting juncture as it relates to some of those conflicting topics, I'll say.
Yvette, what do you think about produce?
I was actually just going to piggyback right off of that, because living in the California area, a lot of folks that are very, very passionate about sustainability. And although sanitization practices have definitely increased at the same time, that is still a strong passion for them. So I think we were just even all talking months ago, pre-COVID, of plastic reduction waste, and it being a huge opportunity, especially in the produce area of the store. So I'm very curious. I kind of wonder if it's going to be a hybrid type of version. It could be an opportunity for learnings of having both options available, or if it's not fully plastic, are they going to come up with compostable type of material and package them in those? I know our consumers would appreciate that more, but then there's also the education behind compostability and having those bins available for us. So I'm interested to see how that goes, whether there is even just a produce washing area that's installed, and are able to
interesting idea.
pick up those and like be able to wash it themselves. That might help some folks feel a little bit better. So I think that there's opportunity for them to once again think out of the box of like ways, because I don't know if plastic wrapping every single apple is necessarily the way to go.
So Stephanie, are you going to pick that apple after I've touched it?
And wash it.
But I love Yvette's idea of having a washing station right in the store.
I agree. And I think one of the things that I would say, though, is kind of a counterpoint to the thought. Now, again, I am aware that this is very Midwest perspective, and it differs from a downtown atmosphere where people might be shopping for themselves or for a shorter time frame. But I don't see us going the route, number one, from a cost, from a sustainability, there are a lot of reasons to not individually wrap. But one of the things that we've seen is people are looking to buy more in bulk. So they might buy a larger bag of something and learn to freeze or do something with it so that they can utilize all of it, but it comes in a larger bag, and you might get a whole bag of apples or a whole bag of carrots that you aren't going to use all at this exact time, and they might find other ways to repurpose. The other thing, and I just thought of this because I've started using it more. I always had produce spray, like the citric acid, which is what comes out of the sprayers at all retailers. And so kind of like the in-store washing station, I could see those becoming products that we want to start talking about. most retailers do sell them in the produce department. I don't think they've been big sellers, but I guarantee that they are something that could be. I mean, I have my niece visiting, and she was adamant that I put my strawberries in some salt solutions she saw on TikTok. So,
No, TikTok.
whether or not it's going to work or change the taste of the strawberries. So
yeah.
we're almost out of time. So Annette, why don't you ask the last question, and then we'll wrap it up. And if any of our viewers that are with us want to ask questions, please, you've got a couple minutes left. Add it to our Facebook page, and we'll take those questions and wrap up.
Yeah, and Yvette or Steph, any final thoughts on how retail dietitians can create opportunities to secure that vendor funding, those shopper marketing dollars from vendors? Any final pieces of advice?
I really like what Stephanie had mentioned on the RDs being content creators. So, taking those vendor dollars and pushing on weekly recipe inspirations, tips for quick assembly of meals, expanding those pantry options. I think that's probably the best short-term solution for now. And then educating on all their programs, changes that they're seeing and making, and offering the vendors an opportunity to be a part of that, of their gold standard type of projects. I think I could see vendors getting excited and wanting to support.
Steph, anything you'd add? Yeah, go ahead.
My last thoughts would just be, going back to that, if you're unfamiliar with what the service level reports look like for your store, definitely look into that. Asking what percent of your ad dollars you've secured compared to this time last year, and really thinking what is a reasonable expectation for you to help contribute for this fiscal year, and aligning it with what the rest of the organization looks like.
And with that, we want to thank you all for joining us. Keep in mind that this webcast, as well as our previous webcast, will be archived on RDBA, or retaildietitians.com. And we will be having another one coming up. Annette, why don't you tell us about that one?
Yeah, the last week in June, first week in July, we are actually doing a webcast on the topic of plant-based versus plant-forward, and how those are being defined at retail, how you can attract a shopper who's looking for one or the other. So we're thrilled. Marta Human from Wegmans will be with us, as well as Monica Ambern from Vestcom for that webcast.
Terrific. And Yvette, thank you. Stephanie, thank you for joining us. And of course, our executive director, Annette, thank you for pulling this all together.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.